half off to save big. Be sure to join us live Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays at 11 a.m. as we bring you lots of fantastic deals right here, AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. HotNewsTalkRadio.com and half off. Surf our site and ride the wave of savings.
Accountants and tax preparers talk about helping help you. EJPelton.com. Click any topic: budgeting, college, debt, mortgage, income, insurance, payroll and benefits, retirement. Go to EJPelton.com right now, and later today, give yourself time to think about taxes and the help you'll need. EJPelton.com, open 52 weeks a year, always available for questions or tax help. EJ Pelton, a company to depend on at tax time. Think ahead. EJPelton.com. Call 332-3339. That's 332-3339.
If the South would have won, we'd have had it made. I'd probably run for president of the southern states. The day Elvis passed away would be our national holiday. If the South would have won, we'd have had it made.
NASCAR, Laura Ingram, Dennis Miller, David Toulis, Coast to Coast AM, and CBS Radio News. Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
News Talk 1240.
I'm going to be a little bit biased here, but I'm wondering why colleges are still here. And I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one who's wondering why colleges are still here, because somebody wrote for TechCrunch, actually, asking the question, why is the university still here? And that's a question that I've been asking for a long time, actually, especially when I was in high school, just ending high school, and I was being pressured to go into college. And I said, why? It's a waste of time, especially because the field I wanted to go in. And there was no clear answer, just you need to go to college. And I said, okay, why? I said, well, because you need to. Okay, but why? Well, because people won't hire people who don't go to college. Well, I didn't go to college, and here I am. So I guess they do hire people who don't go to college. What do you know? Well, the question that TechCrunch is asking, or rather the writer for TechCrunch, who is Danny Crichton, very good writer, he writes, universities are supposed to be dead. These bastions of higher learning have been on Silicon Valley's hit list for much of the past decade, and disruption phasers targeting the industry have certainly been set to kill in the years since the global financial crisis. That's another thing that people don't consider, possibly, is that since the crisis in '08, which there's myriads of reasons why there was a crisis in '08, but one of the main things that really hurt was housing. And another main thing that really hurt was a lack of an educated workforce. So you'd think that the goal would be to make it easier, actually, for people to have an educated workforce, but not really. Instead, it's like, well, you need to go to college and pay tons of money. You need to pay $30,000 to take a bunch of classes you don't need or want in order to get a degree in history. And, in order to get a degree in history or women's studies, you have to learn 5 types of algebra, including Chinese and Latin algebra. And in order to do that, you also have to take humanities classes. So to do all these things, once you've completed all those things, now you can get this slip of paper which determines that you are in fact educated. This piece of paper from this institution proves that you are educated. Why do we still go with that system? That should have died 20 years ago. Why do we still have that system where it's so dumb? You get this slip of paper that says you're educated, and that's it. You spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on this slip of paper that says that you're educated. Whoop-de-doo. Well, yet after years of efforts, the writer says, we have arrived in 2015 and almost nothing seems to have changed about the way we get our degrees or even just continuing our coursework. So MOOCs, or Massive Open Online Courses, were supposed to be the vanguard of the new open online education movement, which was surging to popularity in 2011 and 2012, following a rash of press about how the end of higher education as we know it was going to come to pass very soon. Well, since those discussions have come to pass, MOOCs seem to have actually fared rather poorly. And they have a graph showing their popularity, which is decent but not great. So if we use Google Trends to search for the names of 2 of the most well-known MOOCs, Coursera and Udacity, we see that both of them seem to have stalled in terms of search traffic, a sign of weak new user growth at its search traffic. So, or rather, a sign of a weak new user growth, just period. One way VCs can get a feel for a startup's word of mouth distribution is to look at its search traffic. So, if a friend mentions a new company, people tend to search for it on Google or on the app stores. That's a good way to tell if you're getting any growth or not. That's a handy tip to you, although you probably knew it if you are launching an app. If you're planning on launching an app and you want it to be popular and you want to know how popular it is, word of mouth is the number one thing, or word of keys, word of text on the internet, where people tell you that this is the best app ever and you should definitely try it. And then you do a search for Google's trends, to find out what the results are for your app. Well, why do we still have colleges? Why do we still have universities? Probably because we're very slow to change most of the time. We are extremely slow to change. Now, there are exceptions. But if we're talking about institutions that have been around forever, we're very, very slow to change. Think about the taxi industry, how it pretty much works the same way it's been working for probably around 100 years now. The taxi services have been operating pretty much exactly the same way for the past 100 years. Now, granted, there's been extra licensing and extra requirements and extra certificates and extra taxes and all that sort of thing. These things have piled on. But as an entity, they operate exactly the same. So something comes along to change the game, and people get mad, and they say, you can't do that. We've had this established thing for hundreds of years. You can't go around disrupting things. And that's why we don't have change, because people are afraid of it. Now, there are exceptions, very clear exceptions. In fact, I'm holding that exception in my hand right now. It's called a smartphone. In 2007, Apple came out with the first iPhone. Now, that was not by any means the first smartphone, but Apple Computer Company was the trendy, cool thing, and they came out with this radical so-called new device that everyone liked, and people snapped it up and said it was the next best thing, and Steve Jobs smiled and laughed and counted his money in a dark corner, all while talking about how bad capitalism is. So, so that's one exception. And computers might be another exception, the widespread use of the personal computer, where everyone has a personal computer nowadays, whereas that wasn't even the case 20 years ago, back in 1995, 20 years ago. I know it's weird, when not everyone had a computer, not everyone had an email, but now everybody has an email because you have to sign up for everything, and everyone has a personal computer or a internet-connected device of some sort. You never nowadays hear about people going to the library to use a computer. Now, I mean, you do in some select circumstances, but as a whole, you're not going to be hearing about people going to the library in order to use a computer or in order to have internet access. It's just become so affordable and so easy nowadays. You spend a couple $100 on a phone or on a laptop or even on a desktop, get one from a thrift store or something, and now you're connected. Spend $15 a month for basic internet service, and there you go. It's actually really, really affordable nowadays. Now, that's not so much the case in countries other than ones which are in North America or in the major parts of Europe. There are some areas where internet connectivity is actually still expensive, and even rural United States. I'm sure up in the wilds of Canada, it's expensive to get internet service as well. Satellite internet is notably bad and notably expensive, so there's that exception as well. But we are slow to change as a whole. As a populace, we are very slow to change. And this is one of the areas where we are extremely slow to any change, where the university system has stayed the same for as long as it's been around, which could be 300, 400 years. Oxford University has been around for forever. And so it's not really changed that much. You get a certificate from this university saying that you've got an education from there, and that's it. And for some odd reason, so many people are striving towards that, acting like that is the end-all be-all to all education ever. And it's very odd. It's really not necessary to be an educated person to go to a university. I mean, think about how we have this resource at our fingertips with all the information you could ever want, including information from universities, the universities of old. We have information from all those right at our fingertips on the internet, which you can pay $15 a month to get access to. $15 a month as opposed to several $100,000. That sounds pretty reasonable, actually, when you think about it. I have access to all the information in the world right here. I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 connections to the 7 actually connections to the internet in this office. 7 ways I can get access to all the information in the world from this office, and that's just one room. Think about that. One room, I can access all the information in the world 7 times over. Now, that's pretty drastic, right? That's pretty extreme. So if we have that, why do we have universities? Now, obviously, there would be some sort of system, regardless of there being a university system or not, there'd have to be some way to prove that you know what you claim you know, right? Other than just simple aptitude tests and that sort of thing. But these things can be achieved over the internet as well, right? I mean, you can have a unique QR code for instance, you pay a certain subscription fee for this university system, and once you've completed it, your certificate is printed out that has a QR code or barcode on it. It's scanned by your employer and checked back with the system to make sure that it's actually you and that's actually your certificate. And it's actually easier and better than the system that we have now. So I'm not sure how anyone could ever dispute that this would be a better way to go about things. It's very odd to me how we still have this old college system. We still have this old college way of thinking where people just assume that the next step after high school is college. And why aren't we rethinking education? We should have been rethinking education from the beginning of the inception of the internet being available for the mainstream, the internet being available for almost everyone. That should have been the turning point for us changing how we think about education. But that's not really happening. Well, this is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world besides. AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You can also save half off now. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com. Click on the half off link for great deals. Hot News Talk Radio saves you money. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. In fact, we have a Jeep Grand Cherokee for half off right now on the website on hotnewstalkradio.com. When I first walked in here, I'm the first person in the office almost always. And when I walked in here, I noticed that the microphone was way too low, which led me to think that I really need to talk more about Cowboy Up with Tex because he's always the last guy in here unless I somehow stay way later than I should. He's always the last guy in here. He does immense amounts of show prep. He does so much show preparation you wouldn't believe. As Cowboy Up with Tex, that's his show, which is on from 6 to 7 p.m. every weekday right here on Hot News Talk Radio. He talks about the day's events. He talks about the local events as they're occurring, such as local events like there was the Mud Run, there's the Ironman Rally, all sorts of that sort of thing. That's on his weekend roundup on every Thursday here on Hot News Talk Radio. So he's got a lot of really interesting stuff on his program. He's been talking a lot about Jade Helm. He's been talking a little bit about the NSA. Been talking a tad bit about other things too, including the different candidates for president. So lots of interesting things on Cowboy Up with Tex, which is right here on Hot News Talk Radio. We have Imus in the morning. We have Laura Ingram. On Tuesdays, we have Real Estate University, where Eric and John talk about real estate and real estate investment right here on Hot News Talk Radio. You're listening to Digital Drive, which is my show. I'm your host, Russell. The show we talk about technology and quite a bit more. And Nuganomics.com with David Toulis is coming up in about 45 or so minutes. He talks about local economy and free markets as it applies to us here in the Chattanooga area. He talks about all that right here on Hot News Talk Radio. Of course, we also have Sean Hannity, where he talks about, he's actually been interviewing a lot of presidential candidates. I've been pretty impressed with his interviews, I'm not going to lie. And I'm an extremely critical person. Anyone who knows me knows that I am an incredibly critical person. So it's something for me to say that I've been very impressed with his interviews with some of the presidential candidates. Well, I'm a little bit biased towards other things as well, not just universities, but I'm a little bit biased about cities. You see, I'm a Georgian, and that I know is going to lead a lot of people to want to throw Molotov cocktails on me and cut my brake lines. Fortunately for me, I can see my car from the window here, so don't try to cut my brake lines because I'll shoot you. Because I do have a gun, I will shoot you. So don't try to cut my brake lines. But but I'm a little bit biased about cities. Not gonna lie. Chattanooga is a wonderful, wonderful city, and I do love Chattanooga quite a lot. But I'm a Georgian, and I like Atlanta quite a lot too. And that's where things start to get kind of difficult, because anytime I visit Atlanta, I'm sort of enamored with it. I'm very impressed every single time with all the buildings and all the cool stuff. And I think, man, why isn't Chattanooga as big as this? Why doesn't Chattanooga have so many interesting things going on? And it really does. It's sort of an unfair comparison. And I know that's where the bias creeps in, because it is a very unfair comparison. Chattanooga has so many great things going on all the time. It's just a different city, right? Like, it's a different atmosphere. It's a different attitude. And I was thinking about the different attitudes that exist between the two cities. Atlanta is very big. Think about all the large national corporations that are residing in Atlanta. Turner Broadcasting is in Atlanta. Lots of different companies such as that. The Coca-Cola bottling company, how much bigger than that can you get, are in Atlanta. And Coca-Cola Bottling Company, to be fair, is also in Chattanooga. But we have a different mindset in Chattanooga. We're much more locally oriented. Now, Atlanta does have that going on. They have their scenes, right? I mean, the Atlanta hip hop scene is pumping, man. That's the least hip thing I've ever said. The Atlanta hip hop scene is pumping. It sounds very trendy. More at 11. Yeah, it's very cool stuff that's coming out of Atlanta musically. But we also have so many cool things going on in Chattanooga musically. So I'm not saying that Atlanta is a better city than Chattanooga. Don't get me wrong. Chattanooga is a wonderful city. I identify much more with Chattanooga than I do with Atlanta because I live so close to Chattanooga. But I will say that I've been very impressed with some of the infrastructure that the Atlantees, are looking at putting in. Well, Gizmag has a story about the winning designs that have been announced for Atlanta Bridges competition. So the winners of a competition to revitalize 2 bridges in the U.S. city of Atlanta, Georgia, we're all familiar, have been announced. Creative concepts were sought for the 10th Street Bridge and the Cortlandt Street Ralph McGill Boulevard Bridge. The Atlanta Bridgescape competition is part of a wider scheme to enhance Interstate 75 and 85, the Atlanta Connector, which is about 5 miles long and runs through the city. Now, we all know that's another problem, very big problem with Atlanta, is the traffic. My gosh. You drive through Atlanta, you're going to be there for a while. You may as well, you can just get out of your car and go walking around and come back and drive away. And you're going to be in about 2 inches difference from when you got out to when you got back in your car. You could park on the interstate and just get out and go check out the stores and come back and get back in your car. I don't know what it is about Atlanta traffic. I don't know. Is it poor city planning? Is it bad drivers? I don't know. But Atlanta traffic is almost always standstill. I don't know if it's just Atlanta or if it's that way on the Jersey Turnpike and that sort of thing, but I mean, man, it's bad. But Atlanta's Bridgescape competition is part of the wider scheme to revitalize it. So over 20 submissions were received before the competition jury of designs professionals shortlisted 5 finalists. More than 3,000 members of the public also voted online in the People's Choice Award for their favorite design of each bridge. And it's very, again, to use the word, very trendy looking, very cool looking. But here's the kicker. I was looking at the designs for some of these bridges and I was thinking, we have better looking stuff in Chattanooga. Atlanta's a very big city, has lots of money, but some of the stuff we have in Chattanooga is actually much prettier looking than some of these bridge designs. I mean, yeah, they're cool, and I'm not knocking them. They're really neat looking, but I got to say, I really like the old walking bridge downtown, the Walnut Street Bridge. You just can't go wrong with that, right? How can you go wrong with that? Well, anyway, enough about that. There's a holographic micro battery that is only 10 micrometers thick. So researchers and companies alike have been scrambling to come up with the next generation battery. We've all been working on the next gen battery. In fact, I live next door to a guy who's working on the next gen battery. But batteries are way far behind. There are a lot of things that I complain about that are way far behind, but batteries really are the prime example of being way far behind. We're still using lithium-ion batteries, despite the fact that there may or may not be better technologies out there. And also, lithium-ion batteries are actually kind of expensive compared to some of the other options that are out there. Also, lots of research is being put into alternatives for lithium-ion batteries, but it doesn't seem like anything ever comes to fruition. So it's either we're just going to be stuck with lithium-ion batteries that die after a few hundred charges, or we're going to find some great new technology and everyone's going to be happy. So I can't wait for that new technology to come out. Well, researchers and companies alike have been scrambling to come up with next-gen batteries. Recently, a team of engineers at the University of Illinois, the Urbana-Champaign, demonstrated that porous 3-dimensional electrodes can boost lithium-ion microbatteries' power output by 3 orders of magnitude, as first reported in Chemical and Engineering News, which is, of course, my favorite magazine. I can never wait for the next edition of Chemical and Engineering News to get to my front door. I think, boy, howdy, gee whiz, I can't wait till Chemical and Engineering News comes to my door. But then that having been said, I read, Radio Times or something like that? I read that all the time. But now the team's gone a step further and optimized the electrode structure with holograms, the 3-dimensional interface patterns of multiple laser beams, in order to generate porous blocks that could be used as a sort of scaffolding for building electrodes. So what does all that mean? Well, it does have a result, according to Extreme Tech. A holographic microbattery that's only 2 millimeters wide and 10 micrometers thick with an area of 44 millimeters squared and 12% capacity fade. Now, I'm an imperialist, meaning I don't understand metrics. I don't understand how metric measurements work. But from this, I can ascertain that 4 millimeters square is very small. Now, I do understand metrics when it comes to ammunition. I know what 7.62 by 39 millimeter ammunition looks like. I know what 9 millimeter ammunition looks like. I'm intimately familiar with 9 millimeter or 380 and 38. So, and in fact, there's a 38 sitting in front of me. But from this, I could determine that 4 being a little bit less than half of, a little bit more than half, or less than half. I don't know how you would phrase that, but it's smaller than half of 9 millimeter. That's very small. So this is a tiny, tiny battery. To get an idea of scale, the photos which I have at Extreme Tech show the battery's electrodes, which are actually only 2 millimeters in thickness. Now, that's tiny, tiny. I mean, that's incredibly tiny. So batteries are getting much, much smaller, and I can't wait to see how this 3D micro battery is going to perform over the next few years. And hopefully, we'll finally have something to replace these awful lithium-ion batteries. Because actually, I was reading an article about how batteries are really what's holding back smartphones in terms of size, in terms of thickness. Everyone wants a paper-thin smartphone, right? Everyone wants it. But we can't have that because the batteries are so dang thick. Like the breadboards, or pardon me, the PCBs, printed circuit boards on the actual thing, like the guts of the machine, are not very thick at all. But the battery takes up a huge amount of space. So if we can just get smaller batteries, we can have tiny, tiny phones. And that's going to be a wonderful opportunity for us. And also think about medicine. We have tiny, tiny batteries, then we can put these tiny, tiny batteries in little capsules, little pills that have cameras in them. We can take images inside your colon and stuff to see if you have polyps, to see if you have ulcers and all sorts of cool things. I mean, they already do that, but imagine it being much smaller so it doesn't hurt when you swallow the dang thing. So lots of different cool applications for tiny, tiny batteries, and I can't wait to see what comes out of that. So this is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. The show we talk about technology and more. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. We're everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is on Twitter, where you report the world of science. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. We're going to be talking about the NSA just a few seconds right here on Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world. What kind of fool do you think I am? Just think I know nothing of my...
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway near Holcombs. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts, Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pam Puso. They were armed with knives and guns, bats and chains, bikers from rival gangs who brawled in Texas.
9 were killed, 18 others were wounded. Police were on site at the restaurant, having been tipped off to impending gang activity. Now police say the word is out among biker packs for members to flock to Waco and go to war with law enforcement.
Fox News Radio's Evan Brown. It crashed and caught fire while trying to land. Military officials say one U.S. Marine has been killed in a helicopter accident in Hawaii. With the black flags of ISIS flying over Ramadi, the Pentagon says the fight for the Iraqi city is pretty much over for now.
It's been a bloody tug of war for control so far. Iraqi military say at least 500 people have been killed. That includes women and children.
Fox's John Huddy. Fox News, we report, you decide.
I might get in a bit of trouble with the feds for the next topic, which is the FCC. So we got a lot of stuff actually in the lineup. We got the FBI, the SEC, and the NSA, and there's lots of pile up there. Yeah, there's a lot of news stories that have piled up over the weekend, which is nice actually, because funny story. A lot of the time, here's some insight into news direction. When you come in and it's the weekend is over. Almost nothing happens on Friday and almost nothing happens over the weekend. And it's the most frustrating thing because, you look around, you try to find different news sites, you're looking through your different sources, and there's like nothing happening. Like there's nothing happening throughout the weekend. It's very obnoxious. And on Friday, everyone goes home, so you don't have anything then either. But fortunately, there's actually quite a lot that's been happening over the weekend. For instance, North Carolina is suing the FCC for the right to block municipal broadband. So North Carolina has sued the Federal Communications Commission so that it can continue enforcing a state law that prevents municipal broadband networks from expanding. 3 months ago, the FCC preempted such laws in a lawsuit to save its municipal broadband restrictions in March, and North Carolina has now done the same in a petition filed last week to the U.S. Court of Appeals in the Fourth Circuit. So despite recognition that the state of North Carolina creates and retains control over municipal governments, the FCC unlawfully inserted itself between the state and the state's political subdivisions, says North Carolina Attorney General Roy Cooper to the court. Cooper claimed the FCC's action violates the U.S. Constitution, which exceeds the Commission's authority, is arbitrary, capricious, and is an abuse of discretion within the meaning of the Administrative Procedure Act, and is otherwise contrary to law. I like how he adds that a little bit at the end. It's otherwise contrary to law. Like there's other stuff wrong with it too, but I can't quite think of it. So it's otherwise contrary to law. The FCC's North Carolina decision came in response to a petition filed by the city of Wilson, which provides electric service in six counties in eastern North Carolina and broadband service in Wilson County, but is unable to expand its broadband network due to state law. Wilson's network is an island of competition surrounded by a sea of little to no options for world-class competitive broadband services, an FCC official said when the commission decided to preempt the state law. Will Ayak, who's operations manager of the Wilson Municipal Broadband System, told WRAL TechWire that we are aware of the suit and that we knew that this would be an ongoing process. The FCC claims authority to preempt state laws that restrict municipal broadband from Section 706 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996, there we go, which requires the FCC to encourage the deployment of broadband to all Americans by using the measures that promote competition in the local telecommunications market or other regulating methods that remove barriers to infrastructure investment. About 20 states have laws that protect private internet service providers from local competition. So court decisions in favor of the FCC would have consequences beyond North Carolina and Tennessee, because we've actually been facing exactly the same problem, if you want to call it that, in Tennessee, where the FCC has determined that EPB can expand beyond the borders of Hamilton County, and quite a few people are rather upset about that. So it's a very odd situation. Now, the state of ISPs is also very odd in and of itself, because think about it. Right now, Comcast is the major player in our area. You know, you have Comcast and you have Verizon Fios, but that's not really as prominent. Comcast is pretty much the major player. Charter is also an option, although not really a major option. It is an option. So you really just have Comcast, and you have Charter and Verizon, and those are your three. Now, 3 options is not bad, but then the city municipality comes in and says, hey, we have EPB, which is sort of corporate, sort of state, sort of municipal, sort of weird, and it's going to provide gigabit internet service at an affordable rate. Affordable at the time not being the same as affordable now. So you have this so-called affordable internet service that's being offered by EPB. Now, as a service, I have no problem with EPB service. It's, as a service, absolutely fine, and it's great, and we use it here. No problems there. But it's interesting how now Google Fiber is coming into play, that Comcast is upping their game, saying that now we're going to have 2 gigabit per second speed. So you have all these different changes that they've been making. It's really interesting how competition works, how they'll basically just sit on their hands until something comes along that's going to undercut them. And Google can afford, obviously, to take a loss to provide this internet service. It's very interesting how this is occurring. So will we ever see the day where Google Fiber will come to Chattanooga? I don't know, because they would have to compete with EPB, and Google Fiber, for the most part, actually requires cooperation on the side of the municipality in order to provide infrastructure, for sort of infrastructure, but mostly to provide tax cuts, because taxes are crazy on corporations. Even here in the States. In fact, the corporate tax level in Canada is actually better than it is here in the States, which is ridiculous. That should not be the case, but it is. Which is another thing that drives me nuts, because people keep telling about how great it is and how free we are all the time, but then we have this ridiculous corporate tax rate, and they say, well, those people need to pay their fair share. That's always the phrase. It's always the fair share thing. Like, I'm not sure where in the law that is, where the right of the people to be free, also to pay their fair share. Like, you're free, but you must pay your fair share. I'm not sure what this price of freedom now is, where everyone has to pay a fair share, and what is fair is determined by some sort of awful hegemony that determines that your fair share is half of your income, or 43% of your income, or 62% of your income. That's your fair share suddenly. Where now my wages are actually having to be highly inflated, so that the tax level, sort of taking away half of my money, actually sort of counteracts the higher wages that I make now. So it's a very ridiculous system. But that's, welcome to government, right? Welcome to government, where everything is stupid and doesn't make any sense. Well, the FBI is now admitting, or rather a researcher for the FBI is now admitting to hacking a plane in flight, causing it to climb. Now, this is not connected to any sort of, terroristic incident or anything like that, and I'm not sure what his motives were, but it's a newly published search warrant application. It shows that an aviation computer security researcher told the FBI that he briefly took control of at least one commercial airliner. The warrant, which was filed in a federal court in New York State, was first published Friday by APTN, a Canadian news site. So, yet again, the Canadians are ahead of us. I'm very, very annoyed, very upset that the Canadians have scooped us again. Well, according to the affidavit for the warrant application, the researcher named Chris Roberts told the FBI that he, quote, connected to other systems on the airplane network after he exploited/gained access to, or hacked, in quotes, the in-flight entertainment system. He stated that he then overwrote code on the airplane's thrust management computer while aboard a flight. He stated that he successfully commanded the system. He had access to issue the climb command. He stated that he thereby caused one of the airplane engines to climb, resulting in a lateral or sideways movement of the plane during one of these flights. He also stated that he used Vortex software after compromising or exploiting or hacking the plane's networks. He also used software to monitor traffic from the cockpit system. Now, we don't know if that's actually true. He could be making wild claims in order to get federal grant money. That's entirely possible. But it's disturbing nonetheless that if this is true, then the airlines don't have proper security procedures at all. This is terrifying. Well, it would appear, so they say, says Roberts, who did not immediately respond to ours' request for comments, but he did talk to Wired. He said, it would appear that from what I've seen, that the federal guys took one paragraph out of a lot of discussions about meetings and notes and just chose that one as opposed to plenty of others. He said, declined to elaborate further. Well, this is not really surprising. that the FBI doesn't quite know how to read. After all, they were probably all educated by the government anyway. In fact, a lot of people graduate high school without even knowing how to read. And probably some of those people managed to be FBI agents. So these are the people who are deciding what paragraphs to choose when putting together a report. Well, as our good buddies over at Ars Technica previously reported, Roberts was actually detained and questioned by the FBI in April of 2015 after he landed on a United Airlines flight from Denver, Colorado to Syracuse, New York. While he was on board that flight, he tweeted a joke about taking control of the plane's engine indicating and crew alerting system, which provides flight crews with information in real time about an aircraft's functions, including temperatures of various equipment, fuel flow and quantity, and oil pressure. In the tweet, Roberts suggested, "Find myself on a 737-800. Let's see, box IFE ICE SATCOM. Shall we start playing with EICAS messages? Pass oxygen on, anyone?" Smiley face. Well, this is all very sophisticated humor, which is just that, humor. It is jokes. It's just a joke. That's all it is. FBI agents then questioned Roberts for 4 hours, confiscated his iPad, his MacBook Pro, and storage devices. So since this incident, United has instituted a bug bounty program. Now, a bug bounty program, I should say, is not anything that's uncommon. Facebook has a really nice bug bounty program, actually, where you will get money if you find a bug in their code. They'll pay you money. A lot of companies will do that. Now, if you find something like that in a government website, they'll throw you in jail. If you find something like that in a privately owned website, they will give you money. So it's kind of an odd contradiction there, where people who run private websites encourage you to find bugs in their software and let them know so that they can quickly fix them, and they'll give you a bit of a reward. And people actually make a living off of doing that. A very nice job. And if you do that to a government website, well, they'll throw you in prison for a very long time and say that you're a domestic terrorist who probably has ties to the Syrian Electronic Army or maybe ISIS. We're not sure which. So it's a very different, very different set of rules and regulations when it comes to governments. Well, lots of different tweets about this particular thing. One person is just straight out accusing him of just lying because he claims that there's no way this could ever happen. So it's strange. Did a researcher actually manage to cause a plane to climb? Well, Roberts has not been arrested nor charged with a crime, meaning that either A, it's actually not a crime to hack into a plane to cause it to climb, which would actually be really funny, or B, he didn't actually do anything, which is kind of what I'm leaning towards. Now, I'm saying all this because I want you to be aware of this. Why? Well, I know how the news works. I work in the news quite a lot, and I know somewhere down the line, months from now, some reporter for some cable news station is going to read that article, and he's only going to read the first few sentences of it. He's going to leap out of his seat, shout, "Eureka, I found the best story ever," run over to his news director and say, "Get this one, FBI makes plane crash," and writes that down. And then you read the article, and it turns out that that's not at all the case, but it's a cool headline, so that's what's going to be put on Facebook. And that's how the news works. Congratulations. Welcome to the world of news. Everything is headlines. It's it's a terrible business, really, because it's maybe it's not the business that's terrible. Maybe it's people in general who are terrible, but people do not read articles for the most part. And that's okay because, people have not a lot of time on their hands to just run around and read articles. That's okay. I understand that. But you scroll through Facebook and generally you only read the headline, right? Like you scroll through Facebook and you see a headline, you think, oh, okay, that's cool. And you keep on scrolling. And most people, that's actually how they get their news. That is their key way of obtaining news, is they read the headline and that's it. Now, we have a select audience. We have the Paul Masson wine audience here at Hot News Talk Radio. You listen because you want to be informed, and that's wonderful. Or you listen because you're in your car and you want to know what's going on, and that's cool too. You're not the Facebook sort who reads just the headline and moves on with your day. It's a very poor way of obtaining the news. And unfortunately, that's just sort of how it is. I'm increasingly becoming disappointed in people. Just as a population, people as a population, I'm becoming more and more disenfranchised with people. I was watching this really funny series on YouTube, actually, sort of in jest, making fun of just Americans, very lighthearted, very funny. And one of the clips they showed was a presidential debate for the Republican Party back in 2008. Back when nobody knew who was going to run for president in 2008, and then it turned out to be Mitt Romney, or not Mitt Romney, pardon me, it turned out to be John McCain, and everyone was very disappointed. But it was a debate where Newt Gingrich, remember Newt Gingrich? I don't, because I was born after he left office, but If you remember Newt Gingrich, you'll remember that he's sort of an abrasive and not very pleasant guy. But he was talking about how he has one solution for dealing with America's enemies that he gleaned from Andrew Jackson, which is kill them. Now, that is one solution. I wouldn't say that it is the solution, but it is a solution. And he got, rounds of applause. People were very happy. Yay, kill people. War is cool. War is great. And then Ron Paul was next in line to answer the question, how would you deal with America's enemies? And he said, well, I think we should follow the golden rule, which is we should treat people how we would want to be treated in our country, and that being warlike is not the solution, or something along that line. He got booed. You see, that's why I've become very disenfranchised with people, because that's your voting population right there. The people who are going to take time out of their day to attend a rally such as that, a debate such as that, are the people who are going to be voting as a majority. So you can see why we have these problems here, is because these are the people who are determining what's going on. Very, very distressing, I guess. Well, anyway, an FBI agent, or rather a researcher, according to the FBI, he's in no way affiliated with the FBI, managed to allegedly make a plane climb, and I really don't think he did. Well, this is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We're everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. Download the TuneIn Radio app and search for Hot News Talk Radio. Hot News Talk Radio is on Twitter, where you report the world of sides. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You can save half off right now. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com and click on the half off link for great deals. Hot News Talk Radio saves you money as well. Hot News Talk Radio, that's AM 1240. Of course, Hot News Talk Radio. In fact, we have a Jeep Grand Cherokee for sale on the Hot News Talk Radio website for half off. It's going for a mere $3,500. Which is actually even affordable for me. So I could even go out and buy this Jeep Grand Cherokee. But unfortunately for me, I live in Catoosa County and not Hamilton County, thus am ineligible. But if you are in Hamilton County, there is this Jeep Grand Cherokee available for $3,500, which you can go to hotnewstalkradio.com/12offdeals.php, or just go to Hot News Talk Radio and click on the half off link. I mean, if you want to be lazy about it, you can do that too. That's hotnewstalkradio.com. So be sure to check us out. We have a lot of great programming as well here on Hot News Talk Radio. We have Imus in the Morning, who's been in the radio business longer than I've been alive, which is not actually saying much. Laura Ingraham is also on Hot News Talk Radio. She's a former attorney. She may still have license to practice. She at least is knowledgeable about the law in some regards. She's been interviewing a lot of presidential candidates. She's been sort of passively advocating for Jeb Bush, but not really. Of course, 12 to noon on Tuesdays, we have Real Estate University with Eric and John. They talk about the real estate and real estate investment market right there on Real Estate University, or REU. You're listening to Digital Drive with Russell. That's me. We're talking about technology and quite a bit more. In fact, we're going to be talking about our friends over in the pond right now. Our friends across the pond, the guys who we went to war with and got independence from, sort of. The UK government has quietly rewritten hacking laws to give the GCHQ immunity. Now, you might say, this has nothing whatsoever to do with me. You would be partially right, but also wrong. You see, this does have something to do with us, you and me, because there's a global cooperation between GCHQ and NSA and a lot of different intelligence companies, or not companies, pardon, I wish they were companies, not companies, but institutions, where there's cooperation between them, and so information is shared between them. Potentially your information and probably my information, because they're always watching me. I'm just one of those guys who, there's some guy in an office who has a file that has Russell Stroud on the front of it, and it has 2 or 3 pieces of paper where I said something inflammatory one time when I was 12 years old on YouTube. So the UK government has quietly passed new legislation that exempts GCHQ, police, and other intelligence officers from prosecution for hacking into computers and mobile phones, meaning that quite literally, actually, the UK government is above the law now, because they are now exempt from being prosecuted for hacking. So if they hack, it doesn't actually count, because it's being done for the good of the homeland or the kingdom. I'm not sure what they say over there, and that's that. You shall not question the will of the Queen over in the UK. Well, the UK government has quietly passed this new legislation. While major or controversial legislation changes usually go through normal parliamentary process, i.e. a democratic debate similar to what we have in our very own Congress, before being passed into law, in this case, an amendment to the Computer Misuse Act, was snuck in under the radar as secondary legislation, according to Privacy International. It appears no regulators, commissioners responsible for overseeing the intelligence agencies, the Information Commissioner's Office, industry, NGOs, or the public were notified or consulted about the proposed legislative changes. There was no public debate. So it's one of those cases where you really only know about it after it's happened. So there's been a very major revision to the law, not just in the UK, but this has implications for us here too, where they cannot be implicated for hacking. Now, presumably, this also means they cannot be prosecuted for hacking if they hack to a website here in the States as well. And actually, you'd think if they did that, they would actually get in trouble with the FCC now, because the FCC claims jurisdiction over the internet here in the United States, but that's unlikely. Privacy International also suggests that the change to the law was in direct response to a complaint that it filed last year. In May of 2014, Privacy International and 7 communications providers filed a complaint with the UK Investigatory Powers Tribunal, or IPT, asserting that GCHQ's hacking activities were unlawful under the Computer Misuse Act. I love the names of laws in the UK, by the way, because they're always so posh and so quaint. The Computer Misuse Act. Please do not misuse a computer. Here in the States, it's the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, or the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, not the Computer Misuse Act. It's so much more, I don't know, I don't think sophisticated is the word, but it's so much different over there. Their phraseology is so much different. Well, on June the 6th, just a few weeks after the complaint was filed, the UK government introduced a new legislation via the Serious Crime Bill that would allow GCHQ, intelligence officers, and the police to hack without any criminal liability. The bill passed into law on March the 3rd this year, and it went into effect on May the 3rd. Privacy International says that there was no public debate before the law was enacted, with only a rather one-sided set of stakeholders being consulted: the Ministry of Justice, the Crown Prosecution Service, Scotland Office, Northern Ireland Office, GCHQ, police, and the National Crime Agency. Now, I know this is across the pond, right? This is over in the UK. Why should we care? We're not even part of the United Kingdom anymore. We're no longer a colony. Why should we care what happens in the UK? Well, the reason is this. There is intelligence sharing that goes on quite a lot, actually. In fact, the GCHQ in most articles is considered to be a sister agency of the NSA. So they could, in essence, be considered sort of a separate foreign wing of the NSA. So what the GCHQ does affect us quite drastically. If the GCHQ can hack people without any sort of jurisdiction, or rather without any sort of impunity, nobody's going to question them because they're the GCHQ. They do what's right. They do what's best. They stop criminals. They stop hackers. They stop terrorists. And they're acting in respective of the NSA. That's a very big problem now, because the NSA now has this foreign wing that can do whatever it wants without any sort of prosecution. You see, that's why it does affect us. So we could very well have the GCHQ operating to steal information from us without any sort of prosecution. There's nothing you could do about it. They would be criminally not liable. They would not be criminally liable for any of their actions. Very shameful. It's something that drives me crazy. This is one of many pet peeves, is when people say, well, if you just don't do anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. Well, actually, that's not true, because I don't really do anything wrong. I'm a perfect angel. I do nothing wrong. No, actually, that's not true. But I don't do anything wrong in terms of hacking. I don't do anything wrong in terms of I commit massive sins on the internet all the time. I don't do that. So then, why then should I be worried? Well, because this is blanket surveillance, right? This is information that's being taken from everyone. This is not a case of, well, if you just don't do anything wrong. No, this is a breach of privacy. This is a breach of our rights, an infringement of our rights. It's not taking them away. Keep that in mind, because you can't do that. But it is definitely an infringement of our right to privacy, because you do have that. In fact, it's a breaking of the Fourth Amendment, which if the NSA hacks into your computer or looks at your records from your computer, guess what? That's actually illegal. That is a crime under the Fourth Amendment. I don't care what the Patriot Act says. It's illegal. Even if the Patriot Act made it completely legal, which people are now saying it should have, that doesn't matter, because it's not. No matter what the Patriot Act says, it's still illegal because it violates your rights. Simple as that. It's against common law, it's against the Constitution, and is thus illegal. It's a very simple concept, but unfortunately, statist apologists and people who work for the state don't understand that or refuse to acknowledge that. It's a very shameful thing. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. We've been talking about technology and quite a bit more. Nuganomics.com with David Toulis is coming up in just a few seconds right here on Hot News Talk Radio. He talks about local economy and free markets right here, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I'm
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Surgery does not have to be financially painful. Hi, I'm Surgical Dr. David Red, and I'd like to invite you to my walk-in surgery clinic in North Shore. Quick Surge brings you immediate relief from moles, skin tags, maybe a laceration. Quick Surge. You walk in, fill out a mini form, I numb the area I'll treat, and before you know it, you're on your way home. Do I take insurance? No.